Hey Marta, how you doing?
Good, Vic. What's going on?
Oh, not too much. I heard through a little birdie told me that we're into modern day marine season. I actually let me say it wasn't a bird because it's way too cold outside for a bird to actually, but maybe I got a tweet or something. I just get a disconnect. But yeah, we're in modern day marine season now, right?
We are in modern day marine season. And if I actually woke up last night, true story. I woke up last night thinking about my to-do list for modern day marine. So, it's just so your listeners know, I'm the Marine Corps Association's lead planner for modern day marine. And the to-do list in my brain is like, on constant. So I
Yeah,
woke up. So that's how I know. Birdies or no birdies, I know because I woke up in the middle of the night sort of dreading my
yeah.
to-do list for modern day. It's right around the corner and we are pumped.
Yeah, your brain is just one really long PowerPoint presentation. You're just thinking in slide decks at
It's
this point.
yeah. So between now and showtime, expo time on April 28th this year, that's pretty much what I'm going to be thinking about. What I'm going to be thinking about. Well, and you're going to be there too. Scuttlebutt's going to be there.
There are. Yeah, no, this is it's so rad. I love the way that Emerald has set us up. The location is great. Obviously, being on the showroom floor for something, that what the Marine Corps is doing here, the Marine Corps Association, the Marine Corps League, everything that's coming together. It's there's an audible and an emotional buzz from just being on the floor. So it's so fun. And just being able to talk to the guests that we have and just snatch some people off the showroom floor, like, hey, you look interesting. Let's have a chin wag or whatever. So fun. Yeah.
Yeah, that's yeah. So, to your Scuttlebutt listeners, swing by the Scuttlebutt podcast booth and maybe you'll be interviewed. Maybe Vic will snatch you up.
Yeah. If you make eye contact, there's a good chance you're getting on a microphone. So we're looking at April 28th through May 1st. Is that correct?
Through April 30th. It's
30th.
a
Okay.
3-day, yep, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday at the Walter E. Washington Convention Center. And, this is our 5th year up in DC. So if you're an old crusty Marine, you might remember the muddy boot days down. You don't even have to be that old to remember the old muddy boot days down in Quantico. But we moved up to the convention center 5 years ago and we haven't looked back. It's been fantastic. We're able to do so much more with that space that it's really remarkable. This year we have about 7 additional conferences and symposia adjacent to modern day marine. So we have, we have the log comms hosting an AI symposium and a hackathon. We have UAS, counter UAS symposium that's interacting with symposia. We have the Reserve Leadership Collective that is gathering reserve officers to talk about the future of the reserves. I mean, it's really becoming what we envisioned it to be when the Commandant moved it up there, which is a place for learning and thinking and future thought. It really, truly is doing that. I'm so excited. So excited. 5 stages.
Yeah.
We've got, yes,
It's
it's great.
the amount of Tetris skill that went into putting the showroom floor together is really, really impressive. And all of the events are so cool. Key leader engagements, like you said, all of the symposiums, the events, and there's a new term now for what we were doing.
Small Business Industry Day, and now it's
Yeah,
Marine Corps. Yeah, it's Contracts Industry Day. You know what's really great about it is that we have something for everyone. If you're a young Marine officer or a young Marine just kind of getting into it and wondering, where you want to go with your MOS, we probably have something on the floor for you to handle and explore,
yeah,
right? Or if you want to know how to handle your career, we've got Manpower and Reserve Affairs there. They're going to, they're exhibiting. If you're wondering about the future of the Marine Corps strategically, we've got briefs for that. I mean, we really are this nexus of information for for Marines. And then, leaders, senior leaders, and defense industry partners. I mean, that's where they go and they show off their wares and they say, hey, look, you wanted this widget with this little doodad. That's the extent of my.
No, that's technical. I think that's right out of a lot of the,
Yeah,
doctrinal
out of the
comments.
manuals. Yeah. In fact, yes, the widget with the doodad. I'm married to an active duty Marine, and he loves to go because uh, the briefs alone are great. Like you'll hear from EWS students, command and staff students, staff and Sierra County students. They will come and do their TED Talks on their research projects. It's great information. It's phenomenal all the way around. I'm so excited.
Yeah,
Anxious, but excited.
And for all of those who are just as excited as us, we can start registering now, right?
Holy cow. Yes. Registration's open. And let me tell you, if you've ever been to Modern Day Marine and have registered before, we have an entirely new experience for you. It is so smooth and seamless. You're going to love it. So yeah, registration's open now. Get on there and register. We'd love to see you.
And if you're active duty, it's free of charge, right?
Free of charge. Free to active duty and military spouses.
Yeah, that's on time. Price is right.
The price is right. Free 99.
That's right. So, come on, Walter E. Washington Convention Center in D.C., April 28th through the 30th. And come say hi. I'll be there. So come by the booth and introduce yourself.
Thanks, Vic. Yeah, sounds great. See you then.
See you then. Hey, Scuttlebutt listeners. Welcome to episode 234. This week, we bring another installment of our new series, Literary Lethality, to the Scuttlebutt. In this series, we'll be doing a deep dive into the Commandant's professional reading list, exploring various titles and talking to different authors about some of the books on the list. Today, Michael Jerome Plunkett was kind enough to come on and talk to us about Karl Marlantes' novel, Matterhorn. Matterhorn is on the CPRL as part of the leadership category, and Michael, as the creator of the PBA Abbate Book Club and host of the LitWar podcast, discusses the aspects of this novel that speak to leadership and decision-making, some good and some bad, and life or death situations. We also discuss the origins of the novel, which actually started as a memoir written in the 70s, who the intended audience is, what Marlantes is trying to communicate with the book, and some of the takeaways for today's service members. And more than anything, why Matterhorn deserves to be on the Commandant's professional reading list. This is episode 234. Hey, Scuttlebutt listeners. Thank you for joining us and your continued support. I'm Vic. I'm here with Nancy.
Hey, Vic. How you doing?
Doing pretty well. So we were talking Winter Olympics a little bit. For those listening, that's not what the show's going to be about. Pay attention to the title. We're talking Commandant's professional reading list, and we're really happy to have Michael Jerome Plunkett back to join us to dive into Matterhorn. Absolutely fantastic book, but we were really getting into some meaty Winter Olympics discussion. I really thought, hey, let's just include this part. So yes, Winter Olympics. Nancy, go.
Yeah, the compelling banter about the Winter Olympics. So I know that the Winter Olympics is the younger sibling of the, Summer Olympics, which is obviously the originator. Yeah. But I grew up in northern Wisconsin, and it's winter most of the year there. So Winter Olympics was a really big deal, and I very specifically remember the 1980 Winter Olympics. There was a little crazy game called hockey that was going on. That was a huge deal in the 1980 Olympics, and I just remember as a kid, to go ice skating, I never saw an ice rink until I was an adult. We just went on the lake behind somebody's house, and somebody's dad cleared off a place, and that's where we skated. And so the thing to do when we were out skating on the pond or on the lake was especially in that 79-80 time frame was pretend that we were having our own Winter Olympics. And so
But
I
did you have like
connect.
different areas for the different events and stuff, or does
No,
everybody
no,
just
no,
do
no,
whatever?
no. But I do recall, and I was telling my family about this the other day. They had a good laugh. I had this green scarf that I would wear because it's freaking freezing there. And I remember my friend and I would skate across the ice, each of us holding on to an end of the scarf because that was the banner welcoming in the U.S. team, and we'd skate with a flourish across the ice. And then it was like, okay, what do you want to do today? Do you want to pretend you're the speed skater? Because if you keep up with speed skating, West Dallas, Wisconsin, which is near Milwaukee, is the home of Eric and Beth Hayden, champion speed skaters, Olympic gold. Dan Jansen, another Olympic gold medal speed skater. Bonnie Blair. And this year's Winter Games has, is it Jordan Stoltz, I think is his name. He's another Wisconsin speed skater. So speed skating was a very big
Nice.
deal there. And anyway, that's my little
Everybody trying to run
Olympic.
away from the cold is what's going on. That's fine.
Yeah, we're just trying to stay warm, really. We're just trying to
Yeah.
stay warm. So I have a real strong connection to the Winter Olympics. It really reminds me um, of that carefree period of being a kid, before you have to
Yeah.
start paying bills and, you know, being a parent and worrying about your own kids. It's just, to me, it takes me right back to being 8, 9, 10 years old and not having a care in the world except to skate across the ice.
That's cool, man. I mean, in a similar way, just same, you being a beach guy. I'm sure there's some parallels in that feeling of that carefreeness. I know for me, like, I'm obviously not a big winter just person in general. Like, my biggest experience with winter stuff was in the It's a Wonderful Life, watching the kids go down that hill on shovels. I'm like, damn, they turn shovels into sled. That's amazing. Yeah, I'm a big fan of anything that pits America against the rest of the world in athletics. And so, like, World Cup, rugby, like, all of a sudden I become these huge fans during the Olympics of whatever, Olympics being the same thing. Like, and then as soon as we're out, then I just never pay attention to that sport until the next time it comes around. But yeah. So
What about you? What about you, Michael?
For me, it's like I'm so in awe of some of these events because I'm a big runner. I've run a couple marathons and I love running. And part of the reason I love running is you just put your shoes on, you find some flat ground, or
yeah.
you just go, And like here, I'm like, who has a luge track in their backyard?
Yeah.
Like, how do you train for jumping off the side of a mountain with skis on? You know what I mean? Like it feels like
Yeah.
there's a lot of. It's just so. I grew up on Long Island, on the east coast of the United States, where it was a lot of beaches, so I guess a lot of swimming. But it's just amazing to watch these people and realizing that they're the best of the best of the best and have trained their whole lives for these like 90 seconds going down the side of this mountain or something.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
So here,
I was gonna say that figure skater who had an unfortunate couple tumbles, but was up to that point was just this but very similarly, like, where did he learn that? Because he's actually from the town that I live in.
Oh, really?
he
Here in
learned that because
Virginia.
both of his parents were
Right.
Olympic
But
skaters.
they have
Yeah.
to go to places. It's not like like, oh, let's just go in our backyard or whatever.
Yeah.
You have to
Yeah.
go to specific places. So yeah, it's really interesting to see, like, where does that love, where that dedication come from to make that commitment to have to, like, not just, put your skates on and you get your green scarf and run outside.
Yeah.
So if you had, this was my dinner table question the other night. If you could wave a magic wand and suddenly become a competitor in one of those Winter Olympic sports, tell me what your sport is. And if you want me to start, I already know mine.
I think
Biathlon.
mine might be the same as yours. I think I'd go curling.
Oh, curling. No, see, I would do biathlon.
Oh yeah, shooting the gun. Yeah.
Ski on your, I had cross country skis growing up. That was how I ski to my friend's house to then go skating. I was not given a gun to shoot. I'm sorry to say. But anyway, yeah, biathlon. What about you,
Yeah,
Michael?
I think for me it's curling, just because I
Curling.
like cornhole too.
Yeah, I think I would have to go with one of the jumps. Maybe the snowboard with the half pipe where they go
Oh
down.
Oh,
yes.
nice.
That
Yeah.
one's been really interesting. Like I don't know how they don't get dizzy doing that, spinning that many times around. Like, yeah, I think that's mine.
Yeah, growing up skateboarding, I was never a good. I was more better at street than ramp stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, same thing. Like it's pretty amazing.
It looks
Yeah.
very scary to me.
Well, so speaking of winter and being cold, let's talk Matterhorn. But we're not going to go to Disneyland for it. We're going to talk
Oh God.
we're going to talk the book written by Karl Marlantes, released in 2010,
Mhm.
but was written in like the 70s. Or at
Yeah.
least started in the 70s as a 1,700 page memoir. And obviously, it went through multiple iterations, evolutions, revisions. Without me flapping my gums about this, Michael, what are some of your experiences? I know that you actually have spent time with Karl Marlantes. Before we start getting into our breakdown of the book, like, do you have anything you want to tee up as far as like your conversations with him, what your experiences were like?
Nah, of course. I mean, I'll start with the first time I ever read it, which was in 2010. I was doing a summer program at NYU, and it was a creative writing program. So there's tons of reading and writing. But one of my friends was like, "You got to read this Vietnam War novel that just came out." And he sent me a copy of it because he lived in Ohio and I was in New York, obviously. And I looked at this, I was like, I just told you I'm doing classes all summer. I don't have time to read this. Like this, I'll use it as like a doorstop maybe, but I'm not going to be able. And he was like, trust me, it goes quick. Just read it. And sure enough, on the train, I was commuting in and out from my parents' house on Long Island, and I was reading it the whole time, and I just fell into this book. It hit me in like a way I didn't even know I needed it. And I remember walking, I was like so into it that I was reading it while walking, like through the subways. I was like bumping into turnstiles in the subway because I was like not paying attention, and I was trying to just get a couple more pages in before I got to class. And this was before I even joined the military, and I hadn't even joined the Marine Corps yet, but I remember just being so pulled into this novel from start to finish.
What do you think it was about that novel that what is it about it that pulled you in so quickly and fully?
For the time when it came out in 2010, it resisted a lot of it was a return to what the possibility of a novel could be, right? There was a lot of contemporary fiction, and this is true today, that we trend towards the shorter side, right? More minimalist, not like your expansive engrossing novels. And that's what this is. It's a return to very, kind of a little bit of like an omniscient third person narrative. It plays around with point of view. We go maybe not omniscient, but we're close third person, but jumping from multiple perspectives. We're covering everything up from the battalion commander down to the lowest PFC in this Marine Corps unit. And it's just there's a ton of action. You know what I mean? Like this is a novel that from pretty much the get-go has maybe not combat action, because the first like real combat scenes don't come until a couple of hundred pages in, or maybe like 100 pages or so. But there is a ton of tension throughout on multiple different levels, whether you're talking like interpersonal, the experience of being a Marine, the experience of being a Marine in a combat zone, so on and so forth.
Well, let's get into it then. What if you had to give it, I guess, sort of an Amazon review, 5 stars? What would how many stars would you give it?
All right, I will give this answer, but I will also admit that I'm terrible with this stuff because some people are very strict with it. They've got like they put a lot of their personal identity on how many stars they give a book. They've got
Right.
their own framework for how they approach stars. And for me, I just like having recently just had a novel come out and being so confused as to how some people come up with their rating system. I would personally give it 5 stars. I'm
Okay.
not a hard grader when it comes to that, but 5 stars from me.
And why? Why such a high rating?
I just feel like this is a novel, and maybe this is a good way to segue into like what I know about the creation of it, but it is a novel that was clearly lived in. You know what I mean? This is an experience, and I don't just mean that Carl was a Marine who served in Vietnam and experienced many things in here, but that this is a novel that delves into imagination, that departs from just lived experience and goes to something just beyond, which I think is like the most powerful kind of literature out there. You know what I mean? It's based in
Yeah,
lived
yeah.
experience, but you're engaging with imagination.
Yeah, that's I love that insight because I'm actually I want to touch on a little bit of that when we get into the later part discussions about some of the narrative themes and the decisions that were made, being that it started as a 1,700 page memoir and then turned into a novel. So that's really great. What there are, I will mention there, as much positive critical reviews that have come back from this, there does seem to be a little bit, and I wanted to get some of your takes on some of the, I guess, criticisms of the critiques of it. One of them being the pacing of it. Like you said, the first physical like combat action doesn't occur for a few hundred pages, and then other comparisons where like stuff from like Tim O'Brien, for example, tends to be a little more I don't know what's a good word for it. I don't want to say straightforward because clearly he's O'Brien's playing with metaphor like crazy, but it's not as I guess disguised. I don't know. What are some of your thoughts on some of those?
Well, yeah, no, I mean, Tim O'Brien's another favorite writer of mine. I've read The Things They Carry more times than I can
Right.
count at this point. Yeah. He's very cerebral. He gets into Tim O'Brien's very much when people say The Things They Carry is a Vietnam War novel, I like that doesn't totally resonate with me. I see this
Right.
as it's a novel about really a work of fiction, right? That's what he calls it. He doesn't even call it a novel. When you open that title page, it says The Things They Carried, a work of fiction. He's doing that intentionally, right? He's playing with really it's a novel about storytelling. It's about how memory works. It's about how memories change. It's about the nature of truth. And with Vietnam as his once again a lived experience. But keep in mind when you have a novel like Things They Carried, he's doing a lot of he's playing with the reader a little bit in the sense that the Tim O'Brien in there is not the Tim O'Brien who's writing the book. He dedicates that to the men of whatever Alpha Company or something like that. It's a made up unit. Everybody always thinks it's his memoir. Tim O'Brien had a memoir that came out earlier.
Mhm.
Box Me Up and Ship Me Home. That was based off his actual experience. A novel like Matterhorn, for me, you're looking at a more traditional approach to the novel where there's interiority, there's inner workings, interpersonal relationships, where I feel like a writer like Tim O'Brien's more concerned with the nature of truth, memory, storytelling, and like it's a little more meta in that sense. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? He's being a little more self-referential, whereas with this you have scene, character. When I've spoken to Karl, what he says is like you said, he started this in the 70s right after he got back from Vietnam, like immediately afterward, and he dumped it all on the page. And in his, one of the things he said to me multiple times is there were entire pages about the foot inspections they had to do, the socks that
Yep.
were falling apart after wearing them twice. And when he went back to the novel to revise it and to go, achieve his literary glory, which he felt was going to come very easily, what he started to realize, like very, his heart rate started to pick up because he was like, "What is this that I've put down here? This is not what I remember writing." And there were no characters, there was no tension, there was no story arc, there was no development of anything. There was just a lot of raw experience on the page, which maybe your grandkids would find that interesting in some way, but that's not a novel, right? The
Yeah.
novel is a specific form. And when he started to go back through it, and it took him literally decades to do this, there was a lot of, people always say, well, it's just his experience in Vietnam. I'm like, once again, if you talk to Karl, his experience of Vietnam is actually in some ways more interesting because Karl was a Rhodes Scholar when the war
Yep.
was really ramping up, right? He was completely removed from the war, but he was serving in the Marine Corps Reserves. But because of his scholarship, he was basically he had whatever the word was for it, that he didn't have to worry about getting drafted. He didn't have to worry about getting called up for service. And meanwhile, guys that he knew were getting killed in Vietnam and sent back. And here he is going to class, chasing girls around and going to pubs and stuff like that. And he felt, even though he did not agree with the aims of the war, he didn't agree politically, spiritually, philosophically with what the United States was doing. He felt he had a moral obligation to fulfill his duty, right? That he had signed a contract, and it was the morally righteous thing for him to do. That is the short for, and he rescinds his scholarship, goes back to the States, and immediately receives orders to go to Vietnam. That's the short version. When I say like it's slightly more interesting, is he has said in interviews also that he took the scenic route back to the United States. He didn't go straight back. He actually took the Rhodes Scholar money. And this is not a secret, so I feel perfectly fine saying it because he said it when I interviewed him. And he went to Africa. He went on like an international trip where he spent all his Rhodes Scholarship money just basically having one last free for all, and then showed up in the United States.
Wow.
Yeah, with like he said he basically like had one pair of clothes left. They were very dirty. His hair was down past his shoulders. He had a beard, and he showed up, I think, at like some naval base. And they were like, "What the hell? What happened to you? Like, this is not how it works. You don't just walk in the front door in any state." So that's, to me, that there's no part of that in Matterhorn that gets into like Melis's backstory, because Melis, the kind of our protagonist, so to speak, is a young lieutenant who's just taking over his first platoon, and he's kind of figuring his way out, and he is a college graduate, but he's not Karl Marlantes in that sense, right? So
Right.
Karl is not like, this is the point I always make, and why I even think this is one of many reasons why it's on the Commandant's reading list, is because it really does show the power of fiction. Not self-help, not historical books, all those things, philosophical elements. Of course, those are all in here, but this is literature with like a capital L, truth through fiction, truth through imagination.
Yeah, I definitely echo that, and some of the for me, I love fiction, probably because I have a hard time confronting truth, like actual real truth. But I also find that through fiction, we don't get bogged down with we don't bring our own encyclopedias to fiction. Oftentimes, it helps give us at least an arm's distance from the day-to-day things, or the overlays, the templates that we already will bring to literature or to our reading, or just any kind of consumption. And by sort of taking it into a fictional world that allows everybody to just sort of level out, chill out, and then hopefully pay attention to what the fiction is trying to do. Rather than, like you say, be a little more directive and authoritarian in that way of like, hey, this is how you're supposed to think, and this is what I'm trying to tell you. And it kind of gives you that freedom to figure that out on your own. One of the things. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah, it's fiction, but it rings very true. I know that, I picked it up and started reading it, and I might just as well have been reading a nonfiction piece for Leatherneck magazine. It's fiction that rings very true in that way, but also in the way he's reacting, responding, things he's saying. And if fiction doesn't ring true, if it's just this whole fantasy thing, if it's not rooted in some kind of reality, then I don't think it is as powerful. I think it has to be so. I mean, obviously, master the obvious right here. But I just think if it's not believable, then I'm not really that interested in it.
Yeah. My one of my professors used to call it the fictive dream. That if you can't get the readers into your fictive dream, then you've just wasted ink and paper. One of the things, speaking of fictive dream, though, one of the other critical notes that I actually disagreed with is that the heavy use of military jargon was somehow would take you out of that fictive dream because you spend too much time wondering what it is they're talking about. But it's hard for me to remove my again, bringing my encyclopedia to this. I thought it worked extremely well because it's a story about Marines in in the prototypical Marine setting, and that is in the jungle during combat. And so it's like, how the hell else are they supposed to talk? I don't know, Michael, what are some of your thoughts on because I know conventional wisdom in literature would say that you need to tone it down.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I first read this before I even joined the military. Now I, on the other side of my military service, so maybe it's a little tough for me to comment on that. It's something I hear a lot of, but for me, that like I don't get, as a reader, I don't get hung up on if there's something I don't understand, if it's not central to the story, I'll look it up later. Like that doesn't, like you say, it's not taking me out of the moment. You know what I mean? Like I'm more concerned, like now I've read this novel 3 times, I think, but I haven't read it start to. I reviewed it before today, but I haven't read it start to finish in probably 3 years. And what sticks with me, like I think of certain moments, certain scenes, Melis's development as a character, the way his big crisis of guilt, which is spoiler alert, but if there is one point where he's pretty certain he's killed a fellow Marine accidentally, friendly fire during an assault, one of the many assaults in the book. Those are the moments that stick with me, right? That is good storytelling there. If there's something, yes, I served in the military. I didn't serve in Vietnam. There's tons of very like Vietnam era specific terminology, even the types of rations they're having and that kind of stuff that I didn't pick up the right time. But even through his use of repetition, like it's like the various drink powders that they're trading with each other and that they go back. Those becomes referential throughout the text, and I feel like even if you didn't fully understand exactly how it is that they make the coffee with the little bit of the C4, whatever, the plastic explosives that they're heating up to heat their rations, if that didn't make sense right away, as the novel progresses, like I didn't feel lost by that. He refers to it enough, and there's repetition to the point where you start to feel like you are now in this platoon. You understand the ins and outs and kind of the way a patrol works and the way things are going. Maybe you're not ready to do it yourself tomorrow, but you start through that repetition, you start to understand like, okay, this is kind of the rhythm of these guys' lives.
Yeah, I agree. And I would hate for it, everything that they say to have a bracket that would explain the thing, or for them to start explaining, and then you start getting this case where dialogue is now disguised as exposition is now disguised as dialogue. It's like, that's not how people talk. No. And so, yeah, I do think that it does force the reader to do a little bit of the hard work here. And like you said, either pick up on context or put the book down and look it up if it's really that like jarring for you, or just chill out, man, and enjoy the ride, right?
Yeah, patience is a virtue, and I think that will take you very far. I mean, me and my book club, the Patrol-Based Abbate Book Club, we're reading War and Peace right now. You want to talk about cultural references and like reference points? I mean, we're talking about Napoleonic warfare in the 1800s. Starting with it, like high-class Russian society, that's where the book opens up, and like everybody, they're jumping between French and Russian, and they're making all these jokes, and you know what? I just kept reading and had some patience, and I feel like that a lot of readers could probably benefit from that. Like, just you don't need to know everything on the first 10 pages. Just give it a little bit of time.
All will reveal itself.
Exactly.
In due time. Yeah. Or you get let down at the end of it, but then that's why. We'll do another review and be like, hey, that book is awful.
1-star review.
Yeah, that's right. So then in that case, then, as we're talking about sort of the language, pacing, scene setting, who do you think the audience for this book was? I mean, again, starts off as a massive memoir, evolves over, span of a few decades. In the really fantastic article you wrote in 2024 about Matterhorn from Leatherneck Magazine, shameless plug, you had talked about how the book evolved, and he had mentioned to you about during that time, clearly there were many different battles and wars and military involvement. So it gets released almost 30 years after it was initially written. Who's the audience then?
I think part of the reason Matterhorn was so successful right out the gate, when it became this like big phenomenon and a bestseller and all the rest of it, it was because he did that rare thing where it's hitting multiple crowds at once. Another reason I think this is on the Commandant's reading list is because there's a lot of heritage in here. Now, the Marine Corps is all about tradition and heritage, and you're going to understand the good and the bad of Vietnam, being a Marine. Like, there's one of the scenes that always sticks with me is when Melis is watching it. They're doing there's a QRF response, and all these young Marines, like 18, 19 years old, are running down the side of a hill, getting into the helicopters, grabbing their gear, dropping whatever they're doing to go help these guys out. And Melis is watching it from a bit of a distance, and he has this moment where he's like, he truly understands the expression Semper Fidelis, that motto, that everything, how many thousands of Marines have it tattooed on them, and everybody says it in greeting and passing and whatnot. And that's that moment. It's a very visceral moment. It's burned into my mind about like what that means. And keep in mind, this is not a book that I think makes the Marine Corps look great all the time.
Right.
One of the things Karl spoke to me about was that when he was shedding that memoir form and becoming a novel, one of the things he had to do in order to achieve that was to lean into the racial tensions and the blatant racism and the struggles that the Black Marines were facing in the jungle at that time with their white counterparts, that they did not feel like they were a cohesive unit, that they were being protected, they were being taken care of. He said that wasn't in the book at all early on because that wasn't his experience.
Right.
But he leaned into that at a certain point and realized, like, to tell the full story of what happened there, it couldn't just be, I went to Vietnam, I served as a lieutenant there, and I had this experience. It had to be the entire cohesive whole. That changes the entire dynamic. So you have your legacy there for the Marine Corps, which is a great, for anybody coming into the Marine Corps, or if you're lower enlisted, or even if you're an officer or whatever, if you've been in for 20 years, you're going to get a shape of what Marine Corps you inherited, right? What it was like before you were there. But another thing that Karl spoke to me, he said when he told me about kind of the experience of having the book come out, and even we can talk about this a little bit. When it came out, it was released by a nonprofit press that just did a limited run, and just to get the book out there, people who had, at this point it was over like 30 years he'd been trying to get it published, and he had been unable to get it out there. So this nonprofit press, no guarantees, but get some copies out there. That ended up getting discovered by, I think it was like a Barnes and Noble contest. And then a traditional publisher reached out and they republished it. And that was when it took off. And he was, shot into the stratosphere doing events and everything. And one of the things he said was there were all of these people who had not served in the military, but had been protesters during the 60s or had vehemently disagreed with the war and were not proud of their conduct towards maybe some of the returning service members, or just felt maybe some shred of guilt as having been in this country at that time and not, quote unquote, done their part or had avoided military service. And he said these people came out and it had completely changed their frame of mind of what they thought Marines and soldiers and sailors were doing during the war. They had a complete changed frame of reference to look at that experience that they didn't have direct connections to. So there's another whole audience of people who never would have considered what it was like to be 19, 20, 22 years old and being far away from home and doing this job that maybe you do want to do, maybe you didn't want to do, maybe you wanted to do it first and now you've changed your mind. They had never seen an insight into that. What I mean? I think that's like what makes this book so special is he really hit that in-between space where he's helping out, where he's allowing young Marines who are reading this book for the first time to understand what their legacy really is, while also hitting the civilian population that is given a unique insight into what it was like being a Marine in Vietnam.
How is it that you came to, because you mentioned earlier, you kind of alluded to the fact that you've spoken to Karl, you've interviewed him. How did you get to know him? How did you even make contact with him in the first place?
Yeah, so it was through my friend Tom Schumann, who, is a CEO of
friend of the show.
Yeah,
name drop.
Patrol Base Abbate. And, with the Patrol Base Abbate Book Club, we were looking to get a guest out there. And I think this really speaks to Karl's character, as, 'cause sometimes like they say, don't meet your heroes.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe people got to find different heroes or something like that, because I've had really good experiences, and this is definitely one of them. Tom got in touch with him and said, hey, keep in mind, Karl served in Vietnam. He's a little bit older now. Patrol Base Abbate returned to base program. We were roughing it back in the day. This was our first property. We would stay in canvas tents. There was no running water.
Oh, wow.
We had all our food in coolers, cooled by ice. Like that's what we did for like 3-4 days. And so Tom put the invitation out there thinking he might just fly out. We'd drive him up there for a day and he would give a lecture about, the book, and then we would take him back to the airport. And he came out, he said, no, I'll stay the whole weekend. And we were like, oh, okay. So we got him an Airbnb that was a couple of minutes away from, it was a quick car ride over there. Didn't want to, we were literally sleeping on military style cots. That's like what we're doing. That's kind of the experience that you get, is this very austere environment. So the first night, I'd given him the itinerary of what was going to be happening if we have a great day. And with this, with this retreat, we go on nature hikes, we do yoga every morning, we do some book club discussions, and it's really just a way to reconnect. And so the first day comes to a close. I'm driving Karl back, and I picked him up at like 10 o'clock that morning. We done yoga at like 5:30 in the morning. So I'm driving him back, and I was like, "What do you think? How's it going so far?" And he's like, "I'm really enjoying it." I could tell that he seemed a little bit maybe like there was something he wanted to say. I was like, "Is there anything that I can do to help make it better or anything?" He's like, "Well, I thought you said there was going to be yoga." I said, "Oh yeah, we did it like earlier this morning at like 5:30." He's like, "Oh." It's like, "All right, I really wanted to do yoga." And I was like, "Well," I was like, "We're just doing it very early in the morning. I can make it later in the day." He's like, "No, you don't have to do that." I was like, "Well, listen, I have no problem. I'll be up already. I have no problem getting you if I don't want to, make you get up that early." And he was like, I brought my yoga pants. I'm ready to go. Like, just pick me up. And I kid you not, for the next 3 days, I picked him up at 5 o'clock in the morning. He did yoga with all these veterans. And then I took him back at 11 o'clock every night. He stayed through our fireside chats till the dying ember. I mean, we literally sit around a fire, and he stayed there until that fire died down. And then I would drive him back, and he'd get a couple hours sleep, and I'd pick him up the next morning. I mean, that is the kind of guy that Karl Marlantes is. Like, he was as happy as could be too. He still keeps in touch with some of the people that he met up there, So that was like my experience of getting to know him. And after that, it's been a great friendship.
That's
wow.
awesome.
And also, let me just jump in and do a huge shout out for Patrol Base Abbate.
Yeah.
And if listeners, if you don't know what I'm talking about, please go back and have a listen to some of our previous episodes featuring PB Abbate.
Yeah, absolutely. Good call on that. What I think we probably touched on this a little bit, but like, you dive into some of the specifics, or at least as you're seeing it, Michael, on what it is then he is trying to communicate. So if it's resonating sort of across the generational divide, the military civilian divide, what is it then that he's trying to tell us?
It's like I said before, he wanted to show what that experience was like at the ground level, and not just the ground level, but the ground level up to like the highest levels of command, and to show how the military functioned at the time. There's some great passages in here about the kill counts, right? Like, Vietnam was one of these wars that, if you look into it, they were very data driven. This is when they really started to be like, if we are sending this many men and we're expending this many supplies and this amount of ammo, we should be able to demonstrate result. I think that was McNamara's whole philosophy. It was like this very corporate way of thinking about it. We could break this down and win this war through data points. And of course, it sounds nice on paper, but getting out there and actually being on the battlefield, what we found is that, like, quickly, they'd take sniper fire, they get ambushed, they'd lose a couple Marines, and then they would call in, an artillery strike or some type of overhead artillery support. And afterwards, they'd be able to find maybe one body, if any. And then they're like, well, we can't just tell them we did. So they start exaggerating their numbers, right? This is what any sales team does, regardless if it's in the military or not. But you get these inflated, superficial numbers. And he wanted to demonstrate what that experience was like of being, in a leadership position, a relatively young leader, but being in that position and trying to survive, yes, but trying to become a good leader, trying to deal with the wide range of emotions. Like Melis, when he gets there, he's still got like stuff that his mom sent him, right? It's like the opening scene. I think there's a reference to that his mom had helped him like dye some of his shirts or something like that. And then, like, it's not too long before he's that very boyish kind of demeanor is completely gone, and he's drinking with the older lieutenants, the older officers, and he's starting to see that a lot of stuff is BS, and that he, nobody's really looking out for him, and the guilt that comes with certain decisions that you have to make that are very weighty decisions that literally are life and death decisions that are going to stick with you for the rest of your life. And I really think he wanted to give people insight into that, with veterans. And I think this is especially true today. There is a little bit, and it goes both ways, but there's a little bit of a chip on the shoulder with some veterans of this, like that divide between military and civilian communities, where it's like, you don't know what I've been through. You don't know what I've been through. I think Karl felt some of that when he came back, because at the height of the Vietnam War, a lot of returning servicemen and women will tell you that it was not a pleasant experience. He, through writing Matterhorn, will also talk about this experience that he told me he calls it turning his ghosts into ancestors.
Yeah, I thought that was really profound. Yeah.
Love that concept.
yeah, that by writing this out, that it was a very, I asked him, like, was it revisiting these memories over and over and over again and turning them into a story, cultivating them with characters and tension and character development, all the rest of it. He said, yeah, it was very painful at times, and that it was a very emotional experience, that he'd literally be burst out into tears, crying on the keyboard, feeling like he would come out of it and feel like, where the hell am I? You know, like not even like just in a trance. And by doing that, he turned this into a story that does offer that insight into what the experience was like, but also was able to process it on a personal level.
Yeah, that's so good. There are I mean, you guys see this all the time at PBA Abbate. Again, shameless plug, but it's so important, especially for our veterans who are listening. I don't know, catharsis probably isn't the word, and even if it is, I think it's probably overused. But it's this idea that these memories are history. I think in a lot of different cultures, in particular, I'm trying to think of like Native American cultures. There's this idea, Japanese in particular, also, there's this idea that like these things, these energies, these memories, these experiences, they never really actually go away. And you can either let them haunt you, or you can confront them and at least try to find some sort of closure or some way to work and deal with it, right? I don't know. These aren't fully formed thoughts, clearly.
No, I think there's a lot there though, and I like to take it even a step further. When I was saying that veterans have that chip on their shoulder, that the civilian population, for their own part, almost they put us on this pedestal. And that's one of the things that Karl said to me, was that it's like, instead of they don't have the frame of reference, and this is worse than it's ever been. The divide is greater. There's less people serving in the military. When you had World War II, even Korea, it was so much more intermingled, and now there does feel to be like a little bit of a wider separation there. And what he says, like, instead of the thank you for your service, right, which comes up often, and I think is rooted probably in the overcorrection from the way that the Vietnam generation was treated. Right now, it's always like everything's a Veterans Day sale. It's a thank you for your service. People say that stuff, and it almost gives you a quick cop out. That you don't actually have to have any real conversations about like, what was your experience. Like, keep in mind, I served in the reserves for 6 years. I never deployed. Right. And I can't tell you the number of times I get these, like, people seem to be interested that I was a Marine up until they find out that I didn't like go to war, and then they have zero interest anymore, or they don't know, or they assume that I'm like somehow damaged. And I'm like, listen, I got some cool stories about training as an infantryman, but that's my career. And that's fine. My service is my service. But Karl's whole thing is like to break that down, instead of just like approach it with some curiosity and get to know somebody, instead of this weird putting you on a pedestal. You're either damaged or you're this hero that everybody needs to worship. Just approach him like a human being, right? And that's that part of that coming home experience of being able to just be welcomed home. Sebastian Junger's another writer who I think writes very well about this experience, is that like there's not that connection, that's a huge part of it. And there's no simple answer to this, and it's a complicated issue. But people, military servicemen and women, they come home and they don't find that, like, despite all the efforts and people's best intentions, there's not that real connection, right? They feel like they're put on some kind of pedestal or something. And I think that's also what Karl was trying to get at here, was he was trying to show a really raw human experience of what that experience was like. I feel like, once again, even if maybe you don't understand some of the acronyms or whatnot, or some of the strategies that they're discussing here, but I feel like there's the human side of it. You can very much put yourselves in these guys' boots.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and I definitely sort of the idea of sort of the transactional nature of the thanks for your service, or the performative nature of it, almost like you're virtue signaling in a way, rather than actually like articulating or trying to communicate a genuine curiosity, or even a genuine appreciation. And I don't want to downplay it, because I mean, I've taken plenty of free beers and keep them coming. But there is that sense that after a while, and then especially once, like, after you get it, you get the clink of the and then they're gone. Like, but all that is to say, I think what you're talking about, though, about the sort of the accessibility of it via the shared human experience, Vice the specifics of the military and even more specific, the military or the Marine side of that experience. And I think what he does here in a lot of the ways that and it's so funny that you talk about how he had, 3 pages or 5 pages just on like his wet socks.
Yeah.
But the way that translates here, one of the parts that I was reading where Mellis, is constantly having to take off wet socks and put wet socks back on, and just how demoralizing like that one act is. Like, God help me if I could just have some fucking dry socks. And I think that's something we can all tap into. And that's, I think, what makes, and again, entering into that fictive dream, it really makes it accessible, and it shows that human side that we can all relate to. And it's not this, you're on a pedestal or you're broken. It's, oh, fuck.
Yeah.
I also think it's interesting the fact that it did take 35 years for this novel to be published. I think it really speaks to his character and his determination, and not just saying yeah this is never going to happen, but not only did he keep trying to get it published, but he kept working on it to make it better. Whether it's about writing or anything else, but in this case, about writing, what a great lesson. I mean, it's hard work, and if it's worth it, you're going to do that hard work to keep improving it. And what a sense of humility he must have that he realized, what, this isn't right yet. I got to keep working on it. It's not that no publisher wanted it because they're all idiots. This isn't ready yet. I got to make it better. I love that.
Yeah, he also told me he's just very stubborn, and he refused to do it, and that he refused to, because you said this a little bit earlier, but 35 years, there was quite a few other global conflicts, and a couple of times people suggest him, well, why don't you set it in the Middle East? There's hills in the Middle East. You could easily just make this about the Gulf War.
But he's saying there's something about you just do a word search and just
search, replace,
and desert.
He was no longer working on a typewriter like he was when he first got back. It was a relatively easy fix, so to speak. But he wouldn't, he wouldn't do that. And it was like, this is the story. It's these guys and this mountain, and that's what the story is. And he told us when we were at that retreat in Montana, he told us that he used to, for years, would go into bookstores and go to the big, the new fiction aisle, the new table where the big sellers were there, and he would pick it up and he would read the first couple pages, and he would be like, I'm as good as this, that belief in yourself, and not being deterred. And he said it was also, life got in the way. He had a career, he had a family, he had kids to raise, all the things that but a lot of people, they just they put it down and they never pick it up again.
He didn't give up.
Dude, you're speaking my language right now, man. My fucking manuscript's been sitting on my mantle for 5 years.
Yeah.
But it also too, I guess, going to Nancy's point, like I have so much respect for that singular focus, because not only is it so easy to get distracted, but like for me with massive imposter syndrome, like even when I start to read it, I'm like, oh, this is dog shit. So yeah, it's really profound. But well, I guess we've talked really a lot about the book, man. I really appreciate your insights so much, and I hope that our listeners are taking us away and are as excited to dive into this as we are to talk about it. But I guess one final thought then is, what do you think a Marine who's going through and doesn't necessarily want to read not all the books on the Commandant's professional reading list are outstanding, they're on there, but there's it's so really easy. You could sort of like take a dart and throw it at a board and hit a historical exposition or something from a CEO who could talk to you about leadership. Why Matterhorn, and what can they take away from it, being that, again, it was something that started 35 years ago?
When I think of like my ideal military reader, I think of a lower enlisted guy who's standing duty for, does not want to be on it and stuck with that and would much rather be doing a million other things. And this is an increasingly digital age where our time is just being taken up, and like everybody wants you to go faster. And this is a book that if you can find those in between moments, and I know people in the military have them, put the phone down you're going to slow down, right? The literature has the power to slow down the metabolic rate at which you digest language and the world around you. And I think this book will force you, just by the sheer page count, to slow down and really sit with these characters and sit with Mellis and the Marines he's leading and this mountain that they're trying to take.
Beautifully said.
That is so good. Yeah, I was expecting you to say something about tactics or like some shit.
Oh no, you'll never get that from me.
Dude, that like mind blown officially. Like, let's stop this before I say something stupid and fuck it all up. Well, dude, thank you so much, man, for taking the time and for, helping us sit with this text. And
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, so good. And again, like, continue our hats, and we've got your guys' back at PBA Abbate. The book club is just such a fantastic and wonderful idea. God, you guys are doing War and Peace. Like, you are gung ho, Mac. But that's awesome, dude. Well, thank you again, and I look forward to talking to you more as we jump in and out of the fictive dreams.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me on. It's always a pleasure. I would love to come back again.
All right.
And just before we close out, for listeners, if there's a specific book from the Commandant's professional reading list you'd like us to tackle,
or if you're an author of said book,
absolutely, let us know. Get in touch with us. Let us know.
Yeah, awesome. All right, Michael, thanks, man. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Scuttlebutt is a production of the Marine Corps Association. You have heard the voices or contributions from Major Vic Rubel, USMC retired, Nancy Lichman, William Truding, and our guest. Ty Frazier is the editor, sound engineer, and technical producer. The Marine Corps Association is not an agency of the U.S. government. The opinions expressed in this episode are the personal views of the participants and do not reflect the official position of the United States Marine Corps, the Department of Defense, or the Marine Corps Association.